Old versus new, east versus west, carbureted versus EFI. Let's talk about the device that crosses the bridge, the Holley Sniper EFI. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the garage, and as always, big shout out to all the new subscribers out there, all of our sponsors like Nitrous Express, ICT Billet. Check the links down below and make sure to check out the playlist for more tuning information. You can also get there by going to tuning101.com. It is the easiest shortcut to remember, literally tuning101.com. Takes you right to our homepage. All the information is out there, and then we're adding information every week. We're doing some cool stuff. But today we are talking about the Holley Sniper EFI, the carburetor that is fuel injected, literally a carb replacement, sits on 4150 style intake manifold, has, and if you dive into it, it is basically like a Terminator X or a Dominator or a Holley HP, but it is all self-sufficient. So we're going to do an open box, look at this device and dive into it. And then here in a couple weeks, we're going to set it up on the Nova with the 350, go through the tuning process. We'll talk about how easy it is, how hard it is, what works, what doesn't work. And I know some of you are going to have some feedback. I see a lot of people throwing some hate out there on the Sniper EFI saying it doesn't work for one reason or another. So what better way to prove or disprove that other than to literally throw it on the Nova? Before we get down into the unboxing portion of it though, big shout out to my buddy Corey, who happened to have bought this for one of his projects, had it sitting on the shelf and was more than happy to send it all the way out here to the garage for us to play around with it while we're waiting on the big block to show up. So let's go ahead, dive down into the table, take a look at what's in the box, look at some of the features on the unit, and then we will get into what the plans are for it. Okay, I'm not going to lie, whenever you open this thing up, it's very much like the suitcase on Pulp Fiction or the Ark of the Covenant, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Not really, there's just some black foam on there. But once we take the black foam off, oh, look at this beauty. I mean, this is such an amazing piece of modern technology that has so many super cool features that we're going to be diving into as we move forward. Not a lot going on there, just a carburetor. We've got the little 3-inch display that comes with it, and it uses the standard Holley CAN bus connector, and that's probably about it. Let's pull this out. Wiring harnesses, gotta have those. It is an EFI system after all. And let's dive into some of the different things. We're going to start here. Let's look at the wiring harnesses. We'll come over to this unit here in a second. You'll notice how this thing has nice sealed connectors on everything for all the different stuff. IAT sensor built straight into it. Your standard throttle assembly on here. The 2 bowls, it has dual bowls just like a double pumper. They're bridged together so you can throw this thing on and then just bring your fuel in. These things also will regulate fuel pressure, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. I'm 99% sure that they have built-in fuel pressure regulation. Regulation. So all you have to do is feed this thing with fuel, let it do its thing, and you're ready to rock and roll. I mean, that's pretty nice for a carb setup. But we'll come back to that. So let's look at some of the harnesses that are included on this. We obviously have a main power harness. You can tell because there's a fuse and relay on it. That circles back to our main power connector right here. They're going to call that, well, they don't say what it is. And then we got a couple extra wires. The nice thing that Holley does is actually label these so we can see what they are. And this one is switched instrument 12 volt, and then we have a coil negative input, so we can actually bring our coil status back in. And this is this green and purple twisted is for certain distributors that support this one. That's going to be a magnetic Hall distributor usually, if I'm not mistaken. We're not going to be running that. We're going to be running a Holley dual sync distributor on there that will take the cam and crank positions, bring those back into this unit because it will support it. There's a specific adapter harness that I already have that plugs into one of these flying leads, ties all that information back, and allows you to, here's the crank position sensor, so that would plug in on one of these, but we're not going to need that, as I said. And what we can then do is this unit will actually control timing. So with a distributor box, like we've got a digital 6 that we're going to be throwing on this with a standard coil and the dual sync distributor, this will do the timing curve. completely, which is super awesome. We got some extra flying leads in here. This is an auxiliary harness. Let's see some of the circuits that this thing's going to be running. We got the points output, which we will be using. We'll take that back to this digital 6. And then we've got a couple of spare outputs, 1 and 2, that can be tied to different systems. I believe this will do nitrous staging, things like that. We should have, yep, we got a couple inputs on here. And there's another output. And digital gauge out, which is probably going to be our RPM signal maybe. Who knows? Could be a fuel pressure. We'll have to dive into that whenever we get into the tuning. So this is our I/O harness, gives us a lot of flexibility and options. That is going to be one that just plugs in, boop, right onto that one. Nope, maybe not that one. Nice thing, most of these harnesses have different connectors on them, so you can't really mess it up. That's got, no, it's not that one. Is it that one? There, it's that one. Boom. So that'll plug into there. There's our I/O harness. Main power harness is going to go into this one with this additional stuff. And then, what do we have here? We have yet another harness. Where's the connector for this one? There it is. There it is. So we've got our third harness. If we take a look at this one, what kind of systems we have? More outputs. We've got a sensor reference voltage, so you've got a 5-volt out on this one that can go out to a sensor to power it. Sensor ground, standard stuff. This is a lot of stuff that you'll find on the Dominators and Terminators, more inputs, more outputs, so just more I/O. So this thing actually has a pretty significant amount of I/O built into it, which is super cool. I hadn't dug too deep into all the amounts of I/O on here. There's more on here than we're going to need. So pretty impressive so far. Last but not least, we have our CAN connector harness here, which will also go to the display. We will have to go down to Project Country Club and pull our USB connector out so we can actually plug this thing in through the laptop software, because obviously, as much as you can do some cool stuff, and we will do some cool stuff using the display, probably do the initial setup through the display, we're going to want to dive into the software side of it and get into the more advanced features that are available on this unit. We do have what looks to be a coolant temperature sensor right here that has a flying lead directly off the carburetor. Came with a sensor for that one. And then, that's just a mechanical fuel pressure gauge. Good to know. So that wraps up the harnesses, except for the last one, the important one. This one, if you have done much tuning, you probably recognize this one. This is the Bosch 4.9 LSU wideband sensor. This is a wideband tunable unit where you set up parameters to say that you want to achieve this AFR, and it learns. This is a self-learning carburetor. Kind of misnomer. It's self-learning carburetor replacement. That's EFI, but you get the idea. Another cool feature, because of the relay on here, this blue wire is your fuel pump lead to turn your fuel pump on and off to do priming and things like that. And then, of course, as I said, you have your power and negative leads for your main harness. So some pretty cool stuff going on with this thing. This adapter right here that plugs in there, it breaks out your purple wire in case you're just doing the positive signal from your Hall sensor. And then, as I said, what do we got on the pinks? Oh, just switched ignition. This is what activates it because we have a constant on there. And then our coil negative input, that is just our yellow status back. I don't know that we'll necessarily be using that one because of the setup that we have. We'll have to dive into that later whenever we get into the dual sync setup. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's dive into the meat and potatoes of this thing's kind of like an octopus. We've got all of our harnesses on here, and they're laid out in a pretty nice way because the majority of our harnesses are all tied together, except for our engine coolant temp, which means, you know, based on where our ECT is on the block might determine kind of the mounting position on here. But if we take a look at the bottom, we've got a couple vacuum nipples. We've got our brake booster here. We've got a idle control valve like you would have on a normal car, and then an idle position, our throttle position sensor back over here to let us know where we're at on that. So, I mean, this literally is just a packaged intake manifold, EFI intake manifold kind of setup. And the cool thing about it is if you look down in there, I don't know how well you can see, it is just so smooth, clean runners all the way down. Let's flip this thing over, open it up, and it's just injecting into the runners. Where is the injection at? We've got extra vacuum plugs back here. Some are manifold based, some are going to be throttle body based. These are all manifold based down on this side, except for this one's probably on the top side of the throttle bodies. And it's really, really, really hard to see down in here. There is some rings right above the butterflies down in there, and those rings have very, very small injection holes to help with atomizing. So you're injecting literally right above the throttle body plates. That way you've got good straight laminar airflow coming down these throats. So you get a very good blend before it goes into your intake manifold. And then if you watch the mechanical throttle on this thing, let's open this thing up, you've got primaries and secondaries just like you do on a normal, you know, Holley double pumper or something like that, where you're getting your primaries are getting air first, then you're getting into your secondaries. Now let's face it, this is one of the best looking pieces of hardware that you're going to throw on top of your, you know, 350. It's almost a shame to put something over this to where you can't see it, because I mean, Holley has really gone above and beyond and created a showpiece of hardware that you just kind of want to look at and take in and say, man, this thing is beautiful. The way it's set up, you can tell a lot of engineering thought went into the way that this thing works to replicate a driving style device, but to make it more efficient. So I'm super excited to get this thing mounted up onto the 350. We are going to throw a spacer plate in here, specifically one that's made by Nitrous Express. The cool thing is going to be that we're going to dive into and look at how we can use the throttle position sensor from the Holley Sniper to trigger our nitrous. Instead of having to run micro switches and things like that, there's the possibilities are endless what we can do using these different IOs and things to make a very awesome street machine that still looks like it's carbureted, keeps that old school vibe. So I'm super excited to dive into it. So that's the Holley EFI Sniper unit. Man, what an awesome looking piece of tech. Now, is it going to live up to the hype? Because I'm kind of overhyping it. I'm super excited to check this thing out. Like, it is the best of both worlds. It is literally old meets new. And you know, I don't know, I'm kind of overcome by how exciting it is, because it's got a lot of I/O, a lot of features on it. It's got a very user-friendly programming back end on it. If you've messed with any of the Holley stuff, they're really consistent about how they set up their tables, parameters, all that stuff. We're going to go through the full entire setup where we jerk the double pumper off, run the electrical, get the display mounted up. We'll go through the setup wizard, see how easy it is to fire it up. On top of it, we're going to have to convert over to a fuel-injected fuel pump on this. I actually have a full dropout tank because this one needs to be dropped anyways. So I didn't know that this thing actually had fuel pump control. Makes sense that it would, so we can actually bring it on and have a prime signal just like you would on an EFI car. So you know, there's a lot of cool things that we're going to be able to do with this and probably get a little bit more power out of the 350 that's in there now. I've been tuning on the carburetor, trying to get it sorted out. I'm not the best carb tuner. I'll be the first one to tell you, but it's got a Holley double pumper in it. Those things aren't that hard to tune. I've got just a little bit of tip-in hesitation, but we might be able to just drill the jets off the accelerator pump off, or the hat off the accelerator pump out, and get that sorted out. We'll go out, we'll take the draggy, we'll get a baseline and see if we can actually pick up some power with the Sniper. On top of it, we're just going to see if the Sniper experience is as easy as everybody says it is. We will go through the entire process, document it all. I'll shoot videos to help you guys out there that are considering this swap, whether or not you actually want to dive into spending the money. They're, I don't know what, around $2,000, which isn't a bad price whenever you consider everything that you're getting on these setups. They are basically a drop-on replacement. Let's rock and roll. So I've got plenty of work to get back to. Thanks for stopping by the garage, and you know the drill. ABT, always be tuning.